Imagine reaching the peak, experiencing enlightenment, touching the divine, and achieving the breakthrough so many pursue. You expect life to shift into permanent bliss, gliding in peace, radiating wisdom, and living in harmony. But when you return home, your toilet is still broken, bills remain unpaid. Your mother still triggers you, and most of all, you're still you, just more aware of it. This is the unspoken reality of spiritual awakening. The aftermath looks nothing like what seekers picture. Awakening isn't the finish line. It's barely the starting point. And what follows often feels so unfamiliar that many assume they've failed, when in truth, they've only begun. Carl Jung spent decades documenting what truly unfolds after awakening. Not the polished, marketed version, but the raw, complex, and often harsh reality of life once you've seen the truth. His work showed that awakening doesn't erase your problems. It reshapes them into something entirely new. Today, I'll share 8 insights Jung observed that rarely appear in spiritual discussions. These aren't mistakes or signs you're on the wrong path. They are the real terrain of life after awakening. And the 3rd insight may already be unraveling your life without you realizing why. The first truth no one tells you. After awakening, every relationship you have will die. Not possibly, certainly. Your marriage, your friendships, even family bonds all end. The only question is whether they will be reborn in a new form or remain gone forever. Much is said about leaving toxic relationships post-awakening. What's rarely discussed is how even healthy relationships become unfamiliar. Awakening doesn't just change you, it redefines the energetic agreements with everyone in your life. Jung repeatedly observed this pattern. Someone awakens expecting their relationships to improve, only to watch them collapse, including those with the people they love most. Why? Because every relationship was built around who you once were, not who you've now become. The old agreements are invalid. New ones must form, but only after the old versions dissolve completely. One woman explained, "I believed my marriage would improve after awakening. I became more present, loving, and authentic. But my husband didn't marry this version of me. He married someone who needed him in ways I no longer do. My independence unsettles him. My peace disturbs him. My truth triggers him. We've become strangers under the same roof, mourning the people we used to be for each other." Jung mapped out the stages of this relationship death. Initial excitement about sharing your growth. Confusion when the other resists, bargaining to keep the old while embracing the new. Grief when you realize it might not survive. And finally, the complete death of the old dynamic. Most relationships don't move past this phase. One man described the loss of a 20-year friendship. "My best friend suddenly felt like a stranger. We used to bond over complaining, drinking, and avoiding problems. Now I don't live that way. Our foundation disappeared. We tried to recreate the old connection, but it felt like puppets acting out friendship. Every conversation was forced, every laugh empty. Yet Jung found something extraordinary. Sometimes after complete death, resurrection happens. Not a return to what was, but the creation of something entirely different. The same people, but a new connection. However, this can only happen if both allow the old relationship to fully die, grieve it completely, and then meet each other anew as who they've become, not who they were. The challenge is severe. Can you allow every relationship to die without knowing if it will return? Can you accept solitude rather than settle for falseness? Can you honor your transformation, even if it means losing everyone you love? But what follows is even more difficult, a darkness that reappears just when you believe you've overcome it. This is the second truth that unsettles many people. The dark night of the soul isn't a single event you move beyond forever. It reoccurs, often with greater intensity, revealing shadows you never realized were there. The dark night becomes dark seasons, long years, and sometimes entire decades of ongoing deepening. Most people describe the dark night as though it happens once during awakening and then ends. Jung, however, noted the opposite. Life after awakening involves repeated descents. each one unearthing deeper layers of the unconscious, almost like archaeological excavations into the psyche. A woman once came to Jung in despair. "I survived my dark night 3 years ago, the ego death, the void, the dissolution. I made it through, but now I find myself in an even darker place. This depression feels different, older, heavier, as though it comes from my very bones, my ancestors, even the earth itself. Did I fail? Am I moving backwards?" Jung reassured her she wasn't failing, but moving further inward. The first dark night had cleared surface-level shadows, personal wounds from her own life. This new descent was reaching ancestral trauma, imprinted in her DNA. The next might confront collective unconscious material shared by humanity as a whole. Each return spirals into deeper levels of shadow, personal, familial, collective, and even cosmic. Jung identified these recurring experiences with distinct patterns. Personal shadow, repressed material from one's own life. Familial shadow, ancestral imprints. Collective shadow, cultural wounds. Species shadow, evolutionary scars of humanity. And cosmic shadow, the existential darkness tied to existence itself. Each new descent feels like failure because the ego assumes it should already be free of darkness. Yet, as one therapist explained of his own pattern, every 2 years, like clockwork, I enter a period of deep darkness. Not depression, but something ancient and primal. Each time it feels like death, and in a sense it is, the death of another false layer of self. What emerges is more genuine, yet always with the awareness that many more layers still remain. It's like peeling an endless onion. The dark nights that follow awakening are even more difficult because you're fully conscious during them. You watch yourself dissolve in real time, completely aware yet powerless to resist. You know exactly what's happening and why, but that understanding doesn't stop the process. Jung once described this as becoming a professional dyer, someone who learns how to die because they've done it repeatedly. But even this doesn't compare to the exhaustion that follows when every single moment turns into a spiritual lesson. The third hidden truth is this: after awakening, nothing feels ordinary anymore. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on cleansing karma. Buying groceries turns into a lesson in abundance and scarcity. Sitting in traffic becomes a teaching on patience and flow. Suddenly, every moment carries meaning, overflowing with significance, and honestly, it can push you to the edge. Imagine living in a reality where every single action teaches you something profound. At first it sounds inspiring, but soon you just want to buy bread without reflecting on the miracle of grain becoming consciousness. Or take a shower without seeing water as a universal solvent of form. Jung recorded people who weren't broken by darkness, but by overwhelming light. Everything became so symbolically charged that they could no longer function normally. They weren't drowning in despair, they were drowning in meaning. One banker told Jung, "I can't process transactions like before. Every exchange becomes a meditation on energy, value, and human connection. A simple deposit takes me 20 minutes because I sense all the layers, the customer's energy, the symbolic weight of money, the bank's role in collective consciousness, even the karmic effects of debt and credit. My boss thinks I've lost my mind. Maybe he's right. This overload of significance creates very real problems. Simple tasks drag on because every action feels symbolically important. Decision paralysis sets in when you see endless consequences in every choice. Even picking an apple involves considering the farmer, the store, the economy, the environment, and your karma. Social interactions become draining because each one carries lessons, meaning, and purpose. One mother described her morning, "I'm making lunch while feeling the interconnectedness of everything. Spreading peanut butter, I think of the farmer who grew the peanuts, the sun that nourished them, the rain that watered them, the entire chain of existence leading to this moment. At the same time, I sense my children's past lives, their soul journeys, their karmic lessons. My kids just want sandwiches, but I'm having a cosmic experience at 7 a.m. By noon, I'm already drained from too much meaning." Jung discovered that true integration required learning how to shift awareness, deciding when to operate in full consciousness and when to simply function. Yet this skill often takes years to develop and many never achieve it. In the meantime, it can feel like you're caught under a constant flood of awareness, with no pause button. And then there's the matter of spiritual gifts. They may not feel like gifts at all. The fourth difficult truth is this: the abilities that arise after awakening, heightened intuition, energy sensitivity, psychic perception, often resemble burdens rather than blessings. You didn't choose them, you can't turn them off, and they can make ordinary life almost unlivable. Imagine constantly hearing others' thoughts, not occasionally but endlessly, or feeling every person's emotions as deeply as your own, or knowing intimate details people never shared, secrets, shadows, even glimpses of their death. These are not superpowers. They are overwhelming expansions of awareness that can push someone to the edge of sanity. Jung documented many cases where post-awakening abilities brought people close to breakdown. The issue wasn't that these perceptions weren't real. It was that they were far too real, too intense, and completely uncontrollable. The psychic channels that open during awakening arrive without guides, instructions, or off switches. One nurse, for example, developed medical intuition. She could sense illnesses before symptoms appeared: cancer, heart disease, mental conditions. It might sound beneficial, but for her it was agonizing. Crowded places meant absorbing the sickness of everyone around her. At the market, she felt the cashier's tumor as pain in her chest, the customer's depression as a weight in her body, and the manager's impending stroke as flashes of pain in her head. She confessed to Jung, "I thought these gifts would be beautiful. Instead, I'm drowning in information I can't control, can't escape. I sense death dates, see shadow presences, hear unconscious cries. This isn't a blessing, it's a curse. I'd give anything to return to ignorance." Common post-awakening abilities that often turn into burdens include telepathy, unwanted access to others' thoughts, empathic overload, feeling others' physical and emotional suffering, prophetic visions, seeing disasters you can't prevent, energy perception, detecting wounds and entities around people, and medical intuition, knowing illnesses you cannot heal. Another case involved a businessman who began experiencing prophetic dreams. They weren't about lottery wins, but about accidents, deaths, and personal tragedies. He foresaw colleagues being dismissed, relatives dying, and impending disasters. Sharing his visions made him appear unstable, while withholding them left him feeling guilty and powerless. The knowledge felt like a burden. Jung discovered that learning to handle these abilities takes years of setting boundaries, creating filters, and building protection. At first, it's like being mentally exposed in a storm of information. Many never figure out how to cope, either shutting down completely or losing themselves in the constant overload. And then comes something even harder: the loneliness, a kind of emptiness unlike anything you've experienced before. If these truths sound familiar in your own post-awakening journey, the loss of relationships, the returning darkness, the overwhelming awareness, these challenging gifts, understand this clearly: you are not failing at awakening. This is what awakening actually is. The chaos, the confusion, the unplanned struggles, these are all part of the journey no one prepared you for. Before we move on to the final 4 truths, make sure to subscribe and join this community of seekers navigating this unknown path together. Share in the comments what unexpected reality you've faced since awakening. Your openness might be exactly what someone else needs right now. Now let's continue, because what comes next explains the unique kind of isolation that awakening brings. The 5th untold truth: the loneliness after awakening is not social, it's existential. You're not alone because you lack friends. You're alone because you are awake in a sleeping world, aware in an unconscious reality. This type of loneliness is deep, cosmic, absolute. And strangely, being around more people can make it worse. Imagine being the only one who can see color in a black and white world. You try describing blue, but no one else has the reference to understand. To them, you sound delusional, arrogant, or desperate to stand out. Eventually, you stop trying to explain, yet the vision doesn't disappear. You just carry it alone in a world that can't share it. Jung worked with many awakened individuals and described this unique loneliness. It's not depression, not regular social isolation, but something deeper. The loneliness of expanded consciousness inside a limited reality, of multi-dimensional awareness inside a one-dimensional world. One teacher put it this way: I'm surrounded by people every day, but I feel cosmically alone. I experience dimensions of reality they don't know exist. I have conversations they can't enter, sense frequencies they can't perceive. It's like being the only adult among children, not because of superiority, but because of a different stage of growth. I love them, but we're not living in the same reality. This loneliness has its own qualities, well documented by Jung. It cannot be solved by adding more social interactions. In fact, being in crowds intensifies the gap. Traditional ways of connecting often feel empty, and the more spiritually aware you become, the more this loneliness grows. It cannot be explained to those who haven't experienced it. The words exist, but the reality does not translate. Yet Jung found this loneliness has a purpose. It pushes you to seek connection beyond human relationships towards something much greater. Your journey is an invitation to connect with consciousness itself. It's about building a relationship with existence, finding companionship in presence rather than in people. The trees become companions, the sky a friend, and silence a steady company. The awakened learn to turn isolation into unity, not by surrounding themselves with more people, but by deepening their presence. Loneliness doesn't vanish. It shifts into something entirely different, a fullness that asks for nothing external to feel complete. Yet the most difficult truth is what comes next. The sixth harsh reality: no matter how much your awareness expands, no matter your wisdom or sincere wish to help, you cannot save anyone. Not family, not friends, not even those desperately asking for help. And here's the paradox: you cannot save yourself either. This realization becomes one of the heaviest burdens after awakening. It feels like holding a cure that no one believes in. Or worse, they believe, but refuse to take it. You watch people remain trapped in cycles you clearly see, suffering from wounds you know how to heal. Yet consciousness cannot be imposed by force, not even on yourself. Jung noticed how awakened individuals wrestle with this savior complex. They transformed their suffering, uncovered real solutions, and gained authentic wisdom. Surely that should allow them to guide others. Surely it should at least guarantee their own healing. But awakening is not something you can hand to another. It must be chosen, and it must be chosen repeatedly, even by you. One healer told Jung, I can see exactly what fuels someone's suffering, the childhood trauma behind their illness, the beliefs destroying their relationships, the hidden material corrupting their life. I can point out the path, but they must walk it. Most won't. They would rather stay with familiar suffering than face uncomfortable healing. And at times I'm no different. I see my own patterns with clarity, yet still struggle to change them. This brings a double grief: mourning for others and mourning for yourself. Watching people choose pain when freedom is possible, witnessing souls remain trapped even when the door is wide open, and noticing the same in yourself, choosing familiar suffering over the discomfort of growth, even with full awareness. This inability to save is seen everywhere. You watch loved ones repeat destructive habits you've overcome. You share wisdom that is rejected, misunderstood, or dismissed. You offer support that's ignored or undermined. You recognize what someone needs but cannot give it. And even within, you see patterns persist despite your awareness. Jung emphasized that making peace with this powerlessness is vital after awakening. You can demonstrate what's possible, but you cannot demand transformation. You can plant seeds, but you cannot force them to grow. Be the lighthouse, not the rescue boat. Accept that at times you too may choose the comfort of familiar rocks over the uncertainty of uncharted waters. And just when you believe you've moved beyond ego, something deeper emerges from the shadows of spirituality. This is the unspoken seventh truth. After awakening, a new form of ego arises, a spiritual ego, more refined and deceptive than the original. It's Ego 2.0, polished, disguised in spiritual language, and nearly invisible because it presents itself as genuine spirituality. You don't recognize it as ego. Carl Jung noticed this in every awakened individual, including himself. The original ego doesn't disappear during awakening. It transforms. It adapts, learns the vocabulary of consciousness, and cloaks itself in humility while quietly seeking recognition. It acts enlightened while desiring uniqueness. It preaches non-duality while quietly fostering division. The spiritual ego declares, "I am beyond ego," the ego masking itself as egolessness. It insists, "I don't judge," while silently judging those who do. It claims to be an empty vessel, yet takes pride in its emptiness. It says, "I have no attachments," while clinging to the very idea of detachment. It repeats, "We are all one," yet feels superior for knowing it. This is self-deception at its most convincing. One teacher admitted to Jung, "I thought my ego had dissolved during awakening. But then I noticed myself feeling superior to the unconscious, proud of my humility, competing over who was more awakened and using spiritual terms to avoid accountability. I taught equality while speaking from a subtle pedestal. My ego hadn't died. It had earned a PhD in spirituality and learned to play a more advanced game." This spiritual ego is far more difficult to detect because it mirrors authentic awakening so closely. It appears surrendered, yet remains in control. It speaks of unity while building hierarchies. It preaches love while practicing subtle forms of harm. It demonstrates wisdom while resisting real growth. It takes spiritual teachings and turns them into a shield against transformation. Jung realized this evolved ego can cause even greater harm than the original because it believes in its own righteousness. The ordinary ego at least admits its selfishness. There is honesty in that. But the spiritual ego sees itself as selfless while being profoundly self-serving. It can rationalize anything with spiritual logic, hurting others in the name of truth, avoiding responsibility through cosmic perspective, and using awakening itself as its ultimate identity project. This becomes the greatest challenge after awakening. An ego that constantly interferes with growth, hijacks insights, and turns awakening into another performance. Which leads us to the last and perhaps most demanding truth about life after awakening. It never ends. There is no final destination, no ultimate achievement, no permanent state of enlightenment. Awakening is endless, an infinite unfolding, a journey that only deepens and accelerates. The further you go, the faster the path expands, revealing more to explore. Jung compared it to space travel. People assume awakening is like reaching a mountain peak, a hard climb, followed by arrival and rest. In reality, it's like leaving Earth's atmosphere. You believe you've reached the vastness of space, only to realize space has no end. You are not floating still, you're accelerating into infinite mystery. Every level of consciousness reveals countless more. Every answer sparks hundreds of new questions. Every integration opens the door to more integration. Every ending gives rise to a new beginning, and each beginning eventually returns to an ending. Awakening isn't something you finish. It finishes you little by little, endlessly. The fragments never stop unfolding. A man who had walked this path for 30 years told Jung, "I keep believing I'm nearly complete, almost fully awakened, nearly fully healed. Yet each time another layer emerges, a deeper teaching surfaces. A wider view opens up. I move forward but never arrive. If anything, I see more clearly how endless it all is. It's like the horizon. The closer I move toward it, the further it extends. And it's not only ahead, it's behind, above, and within me. This sense of infinity can feel overwhelming. There's no finish line to cross, no test to pass, no final achievement to secure, no lasting state to hold, no graduation from growth. The idea of final enlightenment keeps shifting further away. Each breakthrough uncovers 10 more waiting, but Jung understood this as freedom, not burden. You can let go of the need to arrive and instead allow yourself to be in process. Stop looking for completion and embrace continual becoming. Stop waiting for the journey's end and recognize the journey itself is the destination. The endlessness means you're never finished, but also never stuck. You're always growing, always discovering, always becoming more, while knowing you'll never become everything. And the pace increases. A single year may hold more growth than the 10 before it. Each insight opens the door to countless more. Each healing uncovers deeper wounds. Each answer gives rise to bigger questions. You're not just moving forward on a path, you're on a curve of consciousness that expands without end, without ceiling, without limit. These 8 truths of post-awakening life reveal something vital. Awakening is not a solution, but a transformation of the problem. Life doesn't get simpler, it becomes infinitely richer. You don't rise above being human, you embody it more deeply even as you transcend it. You become the paradox. For Jung, these aren't obstacles to fix, but landscapes to inhabit. Post-awakening life is about learning to move with these realities, not conquer them. It's about finding peace within the chaos, not outside it. It's about seeing that the mess is the path, the confusion is the clarity, the difficulty is the doorway. You are not meant to master these truths, but to be shaped and refined by them continually. If you find yourself in post-awakening life, thinking you've gone wrong because it doesn't match your expectations, remember, nobody's experience looks like the promise. The confusion, the struggle, the unending challenges, that is what it really looks like. You're not failing at enlightenment. You're living it. You haven't missed awakening just because problems remain. In fact, awakening means your problems are now conscious instead of hidden, intentional instead of automatic, transformative instead of repetitive. You're not meant to float in constant bliss. You're meant to engage deeply with the full spectrum of existence, the beauty and the pain, the joy and the suffering, the meaning and the emptiness, all of it all at once, forever. And the true gift of post-awakening life is not that it's easy, but that it's real. It's real, deeply, sometimes harshly, yet always transformatively real. You're no longer drifting aimlessly through life. You're fully awake, unable to turn away, compelled to experience everything, gifted and burdened with awareness that never switches off. And yes, it's harder than you thought, more intricate than anyone ever mentioned, and far more continuous than you imagined. But it's also more genuine, more vibrant, and far more extraordinary than an unconscious life could ever offer. You've exchanged the comfort of unawareness for the intensity of wakefulness. And despite the difficulties, there's no return. The path only leads forward. If these post-awakening insights connect with your own journey, subscribe to this channel and become part of a community, exploring this uncharted space together. Don't forget to hit the notification bell for daily reflections on the authentic spiritual path.